Alright, I'm having to make this video a second time because I didn't have the audio on the first, but that's okay. So, just wanted to go over some reasons or some strategies that Bernie Sanders can adopt to get some more momentum back on his side, because it's, pretty clear at this point that almost all of the momentum is unfortunately on Joe Biden's side of the equation. And again, the Joe Biden nomination is 4 more years of Trump, and the US and the world can hardly afford, that very, very scary um, prospect. So, and then this is a combination with some of the stuff I took from Kyle Klinsky video on the same topic. So Bernie Sanders, at least on a couple occasions lately, has been interviewed, and he's been saying that he thinks Joe Biden can defeat Donald Trump. No, Bernie, do not go out there and say that. Even if you believe it, I don't know why he would, because all evidence points to the opposite, that Joe Biden would absolutely get crushed by Donald Trump for a number of reasons. So he would get destroyed in the Rust Belt. Polls are already showing that for things like NAFTA, which Biden supported, led to the outsourcing of 1 million+ jobs, a majority of them good paying. Things like the Iraq War, wanting to cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the bankruptcy bill that made it actually impossible for students to file bankruptcy for student loan debt. The corruption angle Trump would hammer in on, as well as the cognitive decline, which Trump has already been going after Biden for. So no, Bernie, don't go out there and say that you think Biden can beat Trump. It's not true, and it's just really horrible move politically. You want to be screaming it from the rooftops that you are the only candidate who can defeat Donald Trump. Joe Biden loses for all of the horrible policy and voting record. So that's one. He needs to stop saying that Joe Biden could defeat Donald Trump. That's really the wrong message to be putting out there, especially when all the momentum, it seems at this point, is on Joe Biden, and he needs to blunt that. He needs to be making the electability issue front and center, that again, he's the only candidate who can defeat Donald Trump. Joe Biden loses for things like NAFTA, the Iraq War, cuts to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, the bankruptcy bill, etc., etc. And then, the elephant in the room that Bernie and his team aren't willing to go after Biden for is the obvious and very serious, and it's obvious and sad, frankly, cognitive decline that Joe Biden is experiencing in real time in front of everybody's faces at this point. And Bernie Sanders could maybe couch it in such a way that I'm not a medical professional, but I've seen some of these campaign events and campaign performances by Joe Biden, and it's pretty troubling. It seems like he has a hard time getting his sentences out. He can't really get through a campaign event without a major gaffe happening where he just completely loses his train of thought. And I don't know what's going on, but it doesn't look good. Hope he gets help. And this is something, that Trump is really going to hammer away at Biden at in a general election. In fact, he already has been. And this is just a huge liability. Bernie Sanders, don't have this issue. I'm sharp as a tack. My wits are all with me. Doesn't seem like that's the case for Joe Biden. So he could make it, couch it in these caring, humanistic terms, but point out what's obvious to anybody that's been, paying attention during this election cycle, is that Joe Biden has some very, very serious cognitive declines going on. Talking about, things like he's running for the Senate. If you don't support him, vote for the other Biden, confusing his wife with his sister, and it's just like a gaffe. He's a gaffe machine. That's why his campaign is running a campaign of limited exposure, limiting that speech he gave over the weekend, where he was talking about re-electing Donald Trump twice before he finally caught himself That's why, limited his time up there to 7 minutes because, again, the more he speaks, the more he gets out there on, in front of a crowd or in front of voters, and no matter what capacity, the worse it gets for Joe Biden. So Bernie and his team need to find a way, I think, to go after Joe Biden on that issue because, again, it's a huge liability and it's political malfeasance to not use that, in my opinion. And something that they're already doing is micro-targeting messages to specific states, specific regions, like things like, trade issues, NAFTA per se. Joe Biden supported that, and the Rust Belt, they're already doing that, so that's good. And then these are a couple from Kyle Kalinske of Secular Talk, as well as the micro-targeting, is go tit for tat with the establishment on things like endorsements. So, Joe Biden got all those endorsements recently, and he got a huge bump as a result of, Buttigieg and Klobuchar and Harris, etc. Bernie Sanders should have, and his team should have really been working very diligently behind the scenes to blunt some of that by getting some, pretty decently high-profile endorsements for Bernie. He could have been, well, up until now, Yang just, endorsed Biden. Yang's a total sellout. But anyways, political, using that political calculation to go after, endorsements like Yang, like Tulsi, like Steyer, in order to blunt some of that momentum and media narrative that Biden got by getting all of those endorsements. I think that's a really good strategy, going tit for tat with the establishment with things like endorsements. That's definitely good. And then make the case that Bernie Sanders is actually the centrist. He's the moderate candidate. He's the one who supports these policy positions that a vast majority of people in the U.S. support. Things like, Medicare for all, legalizing marijuana, tuition-free college, canceling student loan debt, a livable wage, a wealth tax, a Green New Deal. All of these things, are, smack dab center of America stuff because, again, a majority of Americans support them, and then highlight the fact that, actually Joe Biden is the radical. He is the extremist. He doesn't support Medicare for all, even though a vast majority of Democratic voters and just voters in general support it. He's okay with people still dying and going bankrupt because they don't have health care. That's pretty radical and extreme to me. Bernie Sanders needs to, again, be making the case he's the centrist, he's the moderate, and stop using the language of the political revolution, stop calling himself a social democrat. Kyle Kalinske, and I agree, it makes more sense to identify as, I'm just FDR. I'm trying to continue his legacy. He got elected 4 times. He got us out of the Great Depression with the, with the New Deal. And so paint it a more palatable message for, the quote unquote mainstream in the U.S. Stop talking about the political revolution. Stop calling yourself a democratic socialist or a social democrat. Say I'm just I'm following in FDR's footsteps at this point. I want to make America work for everybody. I'm the centrist. I'm the moderate. I'm the one who can help everybody. Joe Biden's the extremist. He's the radical. So that's the list. Stop saying, and then I don't know. I don't know if this is as important, but Bernie Sanders will always preface any criticism he's about to give of Joe Biden by saying that Joe Biden's his friend. Maybe stop doing that as well. It's like, okay, you're friends with him. It kind of paints the message like how bad can Joe Biden really be? Bernie's friends with him. Bernie seems like a good person. Why don't I just support Joe Biden at this point? Because, again, Bernie Sanders has been making the case that he thinks Biden can defeat Trump. Stop saying that Biden can beat Trump. It's not true. It's horrible political instincts. You got to bring up the serious cognitive decline that we're seeing from Joe Biden. You got to micro-target messages. They're already doing that. Tit for tat with the establishment with things like the endorsements, and make the case that Joe Biden is actually the extremist and the radical, and Bernie is the centrist or the moderate. So those are just some of the things that I think could help turn Bernie Sanders' campaign around in some ways. And I would love to hear your thoughts about this or anything else with regards to the election. Peace. Much love.